Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started here in about a minute or so. So grab something to drink, grab some snacks, grab what you need, and we'll get going. All right. Ready to get started here, guys. We'll let some people continue to join as we get going here. Once again, thank you very much for joining our webinar series here on Friday, Lunch and Learns, last Friday of May, going into June next week. It's going to be awesome. As always, I'm Jared Swanson, sales engineer for Access Control out here on the West Coast. And today we're going to be talking about how to use Avigilon facial recognition as a first factor for access control. So going to go through a couple agenda items here. Basically, the purpose of today's webinar is going to be, a couple of the solutions for how Avigilon and Motorola Solutions is addressing, safely getting back to work. As most of you guys are, on a webinar here today, and you've probably been on many of them. A lot of us would like to get back to work. We'd like to get back into our buildings and like to kind of get back to normal. So how are we going to help you get there? I am going to briefly talk on a little bit about ACM 6.6, which is an upcoming release of ACM, imminent release of ACM. There's going to be a future webinar on this, so I'm not going to dive into it too heavily. And we're going to go through the hardware requirements for everything I'm going to show you today. And then you get a live demo, and you're also going to see how to set this up. So how do we get back to work safely? That's a question that has been asked quite a lot. You've probably seen a lot of social media and marketing from Motorola and Avigilon specifically on how we're tackling those things. Just a couple key bullet points on what we're doing to help businesses, end users, and even partners get back to business safely. One, obviously, first and foremost, follow your local guidelines. Every county, every city, every state is going to be a little bit different. Out here in California, my current county, we're not completely open, but we're getting there. So you want to make sure that you're following those guidelines. But for what we're trying to do, we want to be able to provide effective solutions for contactless entry. So there's ways that we can do that using the hardware that we already have in our portfolio. This doesn't require any special hardware, any special cameras or special ACM equipment. It's all stuff that we currently sell today. And you'll see once I get into the demonstration of it, as well as the configuration, how we go about doing this. So one of the things I did, like I mentioned, I am going to talk a little bit about ACM 6.6. We are going to bring this up in a future webinar series and go more in depth on all of these things. But one of the things that we are introducing in ACM 6.6 is our identity correlation report. And the identity correlation report is a report that we're going to be able to use so that we can find a potentially affected individual and then anyone associated to that individual that may have come in contact with them based on a certain time frame. So it's very, kind of very simple explanation there, but I did want to throw that in since we're so close to the release of ACM 6.6. We're, hopefully days away from the release of that. Here's a little bit more on how the identity correlation report works. So we're looking at this being, obviously for something that can be used in a contact tracing solution where we have an affected person, and then we're trying to find additional affected identities in the system or potential employees that may have been affected by, whatever the current scenario is. Currently we're dealing with COVID-19. This could be used for, other problems in the workplace, all kinds of applications. Like I said, we're going to get into that a little bit more in a future webinar. But for today, let's talk about this. This has been a question that's come up several times. And if you guys are big LinkedIn followers, you may have seen one of our EMEA sales engineering teams actually displayed this on a LinkedIn video using facial recognition as a first factor in access control. And so I wanted to put this together for you guys so you can basically kind of get the nuts and bolts and see how they did that. So the first part of this is obviously using a Vigilon control center and cameras with facial recognition and our watch lists. So ACC 7.6 specifically does allow you to have multiple watch lists. So in my scenario, what I'm doing is I've created a watch list for people who are approved to come into the building and people who are not approved to come into the building. When an approved person comes up and is identified with a facial recognition or a facial match, then we're going to enable the reader, right? So by default, the reader is either in a lock no access state or a disabled state. I'm using lock no access for my demonstration. However, you're going to find when I go through the demonstration here that this is not a cookie cutter solution. This can be modified, it can be tweaked to fit your specific application. I'm going to kind of look at it from a very 30,000 foot view, and then you can take the knowledge that you've learned here today, and obviously you can reach out to myself or your sales engineer in your area to come up with more granular ways for your customers. So a couple of the things, housekeeping items, things that you're going to need for this. Obviously, you're going to need an advanced analytics capable NVR. So the NVR4 Premium or standard with the GPU kit. You're going to need a facial recognition license. This is not ACM version specific. So I have tested this in a couple different versions of ACM, and essentially it works in all versions of ACM. Now, I am testing with an H5A camera with a digital output. In theory, or technically, this would work with an H4A camera. However, the H4 cameras are a little bit slower to grab facial recognition hits. Therefore, that's why I'm using a H5A, because the power of the analytics on that camera are just much faster. So I'm getting facial recognition hits nearly immediately versus having to wait 10 seconds or so for the face match on an H4A. You do need an available input on a Mercury board. There is a little bit of wiring that's required for this, as you can see, between the digital output and the Mercury board. And then you're going to need to know a little bit about macro and triggers in ACM, because that's how I'm configuring this to work, is using macros and triggers to essentially watch for an event and then trigger something to happen. Quick little infographic on items that are acceptable to use for facial recognition and our appearance search technologies. You've got a couple of our different camera lines up there. Just keep in mind, if we're looking at the H4 PTZ or the H4 video intercom or even the H4 Pro, those cameras are an H4 camera, so they don't have the advanced analytics, but the H5A line is going to have those advanced analytics that's going to perform these face recognitions much faster. In the center there, you've got your different appliances or NVRs. We do have an analytics GPU kit now available for the HD Video Appliance Pro. So the 16 and the 24 port kit, you can order a bolt-on or an add-on analytics kit to add advanced analytics such as facial recognition to your Pro appliance for ACC. Obviously, if you're using an MDR4 Premium, it's going to come with all of that in the box. And then the last one there for third-party servers and things like that, you're kind of at your own risk. So we can provide that information for you. However, we're really going to want you guys to work with one of our certified platforms. You will need licensing for this. So this is not free. This is not an out-of-the-box feature. You will require ACC 7 face licenses, which are ordered in either a single channel or 10 channel packs. And another thing to kind of keep in mind with this is not something that you're going to want to enable on every single camera in a location or at a customer site. This can be used in specific areas, the front entrance of a building, into a lab or a secured area, something like that. But this is probably not something that you're going to use on every single camera with every single door. If you have that requirement, I definitely encourage you to reach out to a sales engineer so that we can work through the entire project with you. So this is the basic wiring that I have set up in my system, and this is essentially all you need to wire. First and foremost, you're gonna obviously power up your camera via PoE. You've got some sort of Mercury board. Now I'm showing an LP1502. This is an intelligent controller. This could be an MR52, it could be an MR50, it could be an EP1501. It doesn't matter as long as it has an available input. So an input that is not tied to a door. A lot of times when you build a system out, you're going to end up with extra inputs on your system, so they're probably there already. And all we're going to do is we're going to make a wired connection between the digital output on the camera. So you'd have basically one wire or a pair of wires going from ground and out to the input on ACM. This is what we're going to use to tell ACM that the face match has happened, and then ACM can perform the additional functions after we've done that. We've done the initial face match. Okay. So you guys probably want to see how this all works. So let's go into that right now. Okay. So I'm not going to take you into the configuration quite yet. I'm going to kind of show you how things work, and then we'll take you through the configuration. I do happen to be using my cool VT100 body cam to kind of show you guys a couple things. This is one of the credentials that I'm going to be using today, just an HID COS credential. And then I'm going to get on my phone here, and I'm also going to be using an HID mobile credential as well. So this is a solution that we can couple with both physical credentials as well as mobile credentials as in this solution. On the screen here, I'm going to kind of explain what I got going on. I do have the camera covered right now. So this is the camera that we're going to be using for facial recognition. This is just another camera kind of showing you the read that I'm going to be using. And then I've done something kind of fun with some global actions and linkages that link the events that I've created here on one of my wireless locks as well. This happens to be an ASPA Alloy G100, just so I can show you, kind of some of the fun stuff that you can do this. So, and the reason that I have this, camera covered, and I move over here. I'm trying to put my body camera on here.
Hey, Jared, I hate to interrupt you, but your audio's starting to get a little bit garbled.
Okay.
Just wanted to let you know.
Rob, is that any better?
Much better.
Okay, cool. All right. So I'm gonna try to take the microphone with me, guys, so we can hear me through the entire process here. Hopefully that camera stops freaking out. So I'm going to show you now with the camera covered. If I present a card to the reader, I'm not allowed through the reader, right? We can see here in the state of the door that the door is set to a lock no access state. So this is actually the base configuration for this door is lock no access. So present a card, beep, 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 I don't get through. However, if we pull back the drapes, it happens to just be a handkerchief over my camera here, and we get a facial recognition hit. Give the camera a second to wake up. Come on now. Wrong face match. Picked up. There we go. So we got the face match of my face, and now I have the ability to card read through that door. Right? Now, the way that this is set up, and I'm going to show you in the configuration, is I have a 10-second window. So I've set this camera or set this macro and trigger event that when I get the face match, like I just did there, I have 10 seconds to present my card to the reader, and then I'm allowed through the door. If I don't present within that 10 seconds, the reader just goes back to the lock no access state. And if you guys have been kind of paying attention to my window here, as we get the face match, you'll see the reader goes into card only mode. And as I mentioned as well, I've got a global linkage on this door. Okay, so a second door that's actually tied to the first door, that when the reader becomes available, I now can card read into a second door. I did want to show you guys, with the mobile credential as well, right? Mobile credential, beep, 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 no access. However, when I get the face match, I can twist and go, or I can present my card to or my phone to the reader, and now I've gotten my access to the door. Okay. All right. So how did I make all this work? There's a lot going on here. So the first thing that we used to make all this work is that wiring that I talked about. I know this is a little bit messy here, and my camera's kind of tripping out due to bandwidth issues. But what I have is, out of this camera, I have a digital input or digital output that's wired to an input on my LP150. Actually, it's on an MR52 inside of my life safety can here. Let's go ahead and turn off the VT100. And what I'm doing is I'm first using a rule within ACC. So there's a couple things that I've done. First off, I've created a couple different face watch lists. So I have my entire wonderful family here, my daughter, my wife, my son. They are not approved into the building, right? I don't want them in the building. I'm gonna keep them out, keep them quarantined. However, I am approved into the building. So when I came up and I hit that list, you saw the reader made the change of state and all of the things happened. All of that's happening based off of a rule that I set in my system. And that rule is, when a face watch match ends, so I'm doing the entire face verification essentially, when that ends, I'm just triggering that digital output. Okay, so that digital output is wired to ACM. Now, once that connection to ACM is made, now we can perform some actions on ACM to change the state of the reader and all of that good stuff. Okay, and I'm going to show another quick little demonstration after this of how an approved versus a not approved works. You guys may have saw, as my daughter turned around here in my focus of attention, we got a face match list or a face watch hit, but the reader did not change state when she turned around. She was over there playing Fortnite, I believe. Okay, so we've seen what we need to do in ACC. Now let's take a look at what we need to do in ACM. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into our panel that this is wired to, and we're going to create a series of macros and triggers. Okay, so in my macros, I have a couple things that I've created. The first thing that I created is just the door mode control, right? So I'm changing the door mode control from whatever it is to card only. Now, you could think about how you could use this in a multi-factor situation. So right now, in the scenario that I have, we're looking at two-factor, right? Face is our first factor. We get the face match. That is our first factor. The second factor is me presenting a credential. You could certainly add a third factor to this by changing it to card and pin, right? So now that door, that reader requires my face, it requires my card, and it also requires a pin. If you're using a biometric solution, say you're using a Verdi AC5000, this could be a face, a card, a fingerprint, and a pin, all in one scenario. So now that's four-factor authentication. The next macro that we need to create, the next macro that we're going to create, and I did this so that I would have visual notification. So I changed my my Mercury LED mode to be red, completely solid red on a lock no access. Essentially, what that's doing is it's telling the person, hey, that reader is not ready to use yet. However, once the face match hit comes in and we get the verified face, I'm changing the state of the reader, and I'm performing a temporary LED command. Now, this temporary LED command is telling the reader to flash green and red 5 milliseconds each for 10 cycles and beep 5 times. And you can change this to whatever you want. You want it to beep 30 times, you want to beep 10 times, whatever you want. You want it to cycle, you just want to change it to green, you can do that. However, this works for me because now I've given the person who's performed the face match, needs to get in the door, they can see on the reader, and they can also hear, because the beeper is going to be going off, hey, I have 10 seconds to get through that door. The last thing that I'm doing here is I'm creating another macro a third macro as a part of this group, and you'll notice that all of these are in group A. I'm creating another macro to control another macro, right? Because what I want is I want to create a 10-second delay in my macro command so that if we don't present a credential, that it just returns the reader back to the previous state. So mine is a return to lock no access, and I'm telling it to then trigger this lock no access. So it's a delay 10. This is just a delay of 10 seconds. This could be 5 seconds. This could be 3 seconds. It could be 30 seconds. It's whatever you want it to be. And then the last part of it is going to be after the delay runs, set the door back to lock no access. Now with that, this is all of the macros. So these are the actions that are happening on the ACM side. We then need the triggers to make those actions happen. Now, because we are telling an input point to go into alarm from that output point in ACC, it's a very simple trigger. We're going to tell it to use the face match enable reader macro. We want it to execute all of the actions in group A. We're looking at the specific input point that I picked, right? So I chose, I believe this is input 5 or input 7 on my system. I did rename it so that's easier for me to see. And then I'm just doing a point change of state. So the change of state going into alarm is going to trigger these macros, right? So this macro is the first part of it. If we get a delay of 10 seconds, then we're going to go back to lock no access if no one presents a card, okay? So that's how I did, my setup. I did mention that I did something else that was a little bit fun with this. So I have that G100 Aperio lock, which is actually on another intelligent controller. So as you guys know, or may not know, macro and triggers must be performed on one intelligent controller chain, right? So if I have macros and triggers on my main panel here, which is where all of that's configured, I can't really affect in the macros and triggers those another panel's hardware. So I can't tell something on another one of these doors in macros and triggers what to do. But I can do that through global actions and global linkages. So what I did is I created a couple global actions and linkages here to turn on, change my door mode for my G100, right? So the first action is just change the door mode to card only, right? So this is my G100, we're changing it to card only, and then I have a second action that would restore that, okay? So if I go back in, you can see I now have a restore to lock no access, which this is going to be a door mode restored, which the base mode of this door is also set to lock no access. Then using a global linkage, or two global linkages actually, I've said, hey, when this door goes into card only mode, perform that action. So when the RPK40, which was the reader that you guys saw me present the card to first, goes into card only, fire this action to tell the G100, hey, you go into card only as well. And the same thing when the RPK40 goes back to being locked, it's going to restore the G100 back to lock no access. Okay. So as you can see with all of this, this is actually fairly simple to set up. The macro and trigger logic is not super complex. However, you can expand this to make it even more complex. If you had multiple doors on a single panel that you wanted to be able to affect by a face match, you know, a vestibule where people are allowed through the outside door, they walk into a vestibule, then they're face matched to be able to go through the next door. And upon face match, maybe we're locking the outside door to create a virtual man trap or something like that. You can kind of think about some of the applications where this would make sense. Now, the other thing with this, and I do apologize, I ordered one and it didn't show up. One of the things that I was trying to get set up in my system here, because the first part of my webinar talked about contactless solutions, right? The idea behind a lot of this stuff is I want to be able to present a token to a reader, or I want to be able to use my phone to open up the door. However, I don't want to touch that door, right? There's, you know, we all kind of got the cooties around, you know, touching things these days. So one of the things that I did order, and like I said, I didn't get it in time to show you guys, was I ordered a cheap motion-based request to exit, so a flat wall style request to exit device. So in my scenario here, you could expand this even further. If you had an automatic opener on the door, when you get that local grant, you know, once you face match, you get the local grant, the automatic opener can open the door. If you don't have a Rex on the inside of the door, you know, a motion-based Rex, you can use a wave of the hand on an IR-based Rex or something like that, so that when I leave, I'm still able to bypass that and get past the, you know, through the door. So I did want to show you real quick, because I didn't show you in the first part here. When my daughter turns around, hi daughter, she's gonna get up and walk in front of the camera. And hopefully we get a face match. Of course, it never does it when you want it to. Turn around and go back. Of course. You're good. Let's see if we get something now.
Yeah, I got you. No, not me too.
Ah, there it goes. So on my daughter's face match, we did not get the beep, beep, beep to allow through. But once I did, you know, once I went through, I was able to get through. I will give you guys a little bit of background. If you guys remember when I was talking about the hardware part and bringing third-party servers to the equation here, I am not running this on an NVR4 Premium. Therefore, I am, you know, doing this at my own risk. So the delays in doing the face match and things like that, it's all susceptible to, you know, network interference, you know, CPU processing and all of that good stuff. So with that, guys, that's pretty much the entire presentation here. I'm going to take a look at the question and answer. We didn't have a whole lot of poll questions for you guys on this one. We just wanted to see, just wanted to show you another way of doing this. You know, normally we do these things in an hour session. Happy to stay on for a couple minutes. If any of you guys want to come off of mute and ask some questions or ask, you know, some other applications, we kind of love a little bit of interactivity on this session to see, one, what you're seeing out there in the marketplace. If we have any end users on the call here today, you know, what you guys are seeing in the marketplace or what you need to help your business open. And I kind of just like to know, hey, do you guys think that this is something that can help you with our efforts to, you know, open in the whole country back up? So feel free, anybody want to come off of mute or just throw another question in the question box. All right. Not a whole lot of questions, guys. Unexpected, but that's okay. Well, guys, hopefully you guys got some good information out of this today. I know it's a short webinar. Francisco and Rob, what do we have lined up for next week?
All right, so Monday, this is Francisco. Monday, we have integration between ACM and Bosch intrusion panel. So we're going to cover that. Monday is noon Eastern time. Okay, so hope to see you guys all on next Monday, noon Eastern time. Rob?
So Wednesday at noon Central Time, we're going to talk about first card unlock scenarios. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do that. And we're also going to cover double swipe. So be sure to join.
And it looks like next Friday, June 5th, I think we're going to be throwing our newest sales engineer into the fire. Mr. Ryan Kavanaugh, is going to be covering area control and mustering. So another kind of great solution around getting people back to work safely and effectively. Any additional questions, guys? If you didn't get a chance to put them in the Q&A session, please feel free to reach out to one of us sales engineers. I know we get a lot of questions around where are the recordings for these webinar sessions. We are putting the recordings in the training center. So if you log on to training.avigilon.com, underneath resources, and down at the bottom, it's virtual training sessions. We have a lot of the previous links are there. We're still, we're constantly updating those. We're a couple of sessions behind, but the training department is putting in those videos as quickly as we possibly can. So today's video will probably be up there early next week. If you are having a problem trying to find a specific video, once again, please feel free to reach out to one of us via email, and we'll be happy to try to get you the session that you missed. Looking forward to hopefully everybody getting back to work. Glad everybody joined today. Once again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to somebody. Happy to help. Thanks, everybody.